but there are things that you will maybe discover along the way that you didn't know about your health. In clinical trials, these folks that participate get the basics of healthcare. They get their labs drawn, they get a physical exam performed, they get their vital signs done. So they find out maybe they had some underlying condition that they didn't know about before. And everybody, when you join a clinical study, just know that you have rights. You have your welfare protected. There are components to the process of joining.
Welcome to Workshop Wednesday. Welcome to We Work Every Day. 7 days a week, cause we striving towards a better day. Don't cut me down for showing my true colors. Love me for me, cause I show love to others. This is for entrepreneurship, for Black Lives Matter. This is for the ones who are forgotten. I pray we never go backwards. This is for pushing forward in the face of adversity. Thank you, God, for protection when the world was cursing me. This is for strength, courage, and wisdom. They can't keep us in shackles. You're the one that could change the trajectory of those family matters. Be the first college grad, be the first millionaire. Be your own wildest dreams, cause the world ain't fair.
Throughout her course of work, she's performed as a preliminary regulatory review, site monitoring, and primary coordination for all region, human, and non-human research projects submitted to internal review boards for review and approval. She comes with a vast array of knowledge in clinical research, and she's going to tell us how we can protect ourselves as we're going through these clinical trials for the COVID-19 vaccine. She's going to tell us our rights in the trial. She's worked as Human Subjects Protections Clinical Research Associate and also worked as a monitor and randomized double-blind, double-dummy parallel group in phase 3. She's done great work in her field. She's continued her professional affiliations as a member of a regulatory affairs professional society since 2014, and also continued to serve as a member of Society of Clinical Research Associates since 2011. With no further ado, Workshop Wednesday brings to you Katheryn Farias. She's going to tell us about our rights during a clinical trial. So Katheryn, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to clinical research?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Katheryn Farias, but I go by Kat. So I got into clinical research because I've always been a curious person, and I wanted to see how I could help the healthcare industry in better or further medical, technology. Let's see what we can do to improve our quality of life, or maybe find a cure for certain diseases that exist, certain conditions. I myself have had family members who have passed on young just because they weren't well informed of their disease at an early stage in life. And so by the time it got around to when they were informed, it was kind of like on that slippery slope where it was just too late. Or just, family members that didn't take care of themselves, especially living in the Latin community, being part of the Latin community. We don't exactly eat the healthiest, right? We don't exactly exercise how we should. So I wanted to be part of something that was a little bit bigger than myself.
Awesome. That is an excellent way to find your path. And with that being said, we want to thank Ms. Kametria Nicole Epps that allowed us to connect, as she has
Definitely
found her path in clinical research as well, and finding help for others. Moving on down that same line of questioning, what are some of the current challenges that you see in this era as minority groups, particularly Hispanic, African American, and those that are undocumented, not just Hispanic, but just undocumented individuals that are coming here to find work? With the current environment and apprehensions that are surrounding the clinical trials, especially as it aligns to that of the COVID-19 vaccine, what are some of the current challenges that you see facing those groups of people?
So with people participating in clinical research, as far as, minorities are concerned, we see a lot of people that maybe do it for the money part of it, and that's never a benefit. As far as undocumented folks, because there's always a plus and a minus, right? So as far as undocumented folks go, they don't want to get involved because of their immigration status. they don't have an immigration status. And so we want to clear the air on both sides of the fence. If you are undocumented and you do want to participate in a clinical trial, whatever your reasoning may be, these people are not going to ask you for your immigration status. It's not part of the process in enrolling in a clinical study. This is a process where we want to see what data contributes to getting a particular drug, or like right now with COVID, this vaccine to the market so that it's available not just, nationwide, but worldwide, because it's a pandemic. It's affected everybody globally. For folks that are documented and you are a citizen or maybe a resident, I think that if your fear lies with, okay, what are my choices? What's going to be done to me? Do I have a say? I think those fears can be laid to rest a little bit by just knowing that there are some things, maybe, there are some things that you wouldn't learn about yourself that most folks haven't learned about themselves medical wise if they hadn't joined a clinical trial, because the benefit should never be financial. Although, let's face it, for some of us, it is.
It is.
There are people that live in regions of this country still today that don't have the financial means to support their daily life. They're always looking for alternatives. They don't have an education, they don't have a trade skill. And so they're always finding a substitute to fill their pockets. And this is a way for them to do that. Now, if that is the drive for you and you're that person, that's fine. But there are things that you will maybe discover along the way that you didn't know about your health. In clinical trials, these folks that participate get the basics of healthcare. They get their labs drawn, they get a physical exam performed, they get their vital signs done. So they find out maybe they had some underlying condition that they didn't know about before. And everybody, when you join a clinical study, just know that you have rights. You have your welfare protected. There are components to the process of joining. So with that being said, we have an informed consent process and we have an informed consent form. Now the process, it's basically telling you what's going to happen during the trial, what you're going to go through, what your rights are as you as a participant, just meaning that, you know what, this is voluntary. You can join or leave when you totally please. It's not something you have to stick through, although we'd like you to stick through it because of the data. It's not something that you're forced to do. And so with that being said, throughout that process, all of those things are in the consent form. And if you don't understand the language that it's being explained to you in the process, or the language that the form comes in, you have the right to provide your own translator, which can be your neighbor, your cousin, your friend, your wife, husband, whatever. And you also have the right to request a certified translator from the institution, from the clinic or hospital that you're going or thinking about joining the study with.
That's good information.
Now, all of these places, all of these studies, they have one key thing component in mind aside from everything else. They have a group of folks that their sole job, like every day, their sole purpose is to provide ethical consideration and ethical oversight over that study, which means that the study folks have to be doing things the right way. And if something is not making sense or something in the study that you've read in the consent form doesn't match with what's going on, if you did decide to join the study, for example, then these are the people that you need to dial up. Their phone number is in the consent form. They are called the Institutional Review Board,
Okay.
or IRB for short. And every study has one. Some have two.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, some have two, depending if the study has a central review board or a local review board. Some places require both, just depending on the institution. So these people are here to protect you. They're here to hear you out. if you have any complaints or you just want to express a concern, call them up. They're typically on the second to last page of that consent form that you sign. Call them up and they will hear out your concern, your complaint, and their job is to investigate it to the fullest.
Awesome. That is very good information because many of us, are not necessarily taught to advocate for ourselves, and we find ourselves in circumstances that
Mm-hmm.
are very uncomfortable and don't know the path to go to question or ask those questions, which kind of leads me to those that may have children in the study. What are some
Mm-hmm.
strategies that parents can use as it relates to clinical vaccine trials? And what are the regulations as it relates to minors by age in this category? Because you mentioned something in regards to funding. And me working in the school system for years, I've seen how it might not be the best thing to do, but children are put in certain circumstances for financial gain. And if a child is participating in the study along with their parent to bring the resources into the house, what are some of the strategies that parents can use in regards to this clinical vaccine? And what are the regulations as it relates to minors by age and category?
So here's the thing, when it comes to kids, they are known as a vulnerable population.
Okay.
And the subpart of the actual regulation is subpart C, right? These are children. These are, dependents of someone else. And so these folks, they can't get into a study without having permission from their parent if they are a minor. Anyone over the age of 18 can join and do what they want to on their own. Now, they sign a total different consent form. They sign a consent form that is what's called an assent. So they are assenting to join the trial with the approval of their parent or guardian. So
Mm.
it's not just them on their own. I mean, it's coercive if you stick a child in a room, somebody that's maybe like, when I say child, I would say somebody who's like 16, right? And let me correct myself. So this is not subpart C, this is subpart D for our dependents. Subpart C is for people who are incarcerated for criminals. But these are people who, these kids can't walk into a room and sit with an adult and have an adult explain things to them with them not interpreting like, oh yeah, this is something I totally want to do, without it sounding glamorous, because then it would be, it'd be coercive at that point. It would be them, the adult, kind of forcing it on the child, and that's not what research is about. Um, it's about volunteering. It's about someone choosing their participation. So I think that when it comes to parents and their worries about clinical studies, I would say two things. I would say one, keep an open mind. My advice is keep an open mind and think about what your end goal is. Do you want your child to join because maybe they have a condition that hasn't, that maybe they've been placed on a medical procedure, or they've been placed on a pharmaceutical drug that hasn't really worked too well for them up until now, and so your overall goal is their quality of life?
Okay.
Look at it from that perspective. Now also, if you're looking at it from the perspective of, well, this is going to bring more income into our household if my child joins this study, look at the procedures that everything is outlined in the consent form for people. They explain the study, the procedures, the visits, what exactly is going to go on. Now, does my child want to go through this, and do I want to put them through this? Is the compensation that is stated there, is that really worth it? Different studies pay different studies allow for different amounts of compensation. So, maybe a study that has, like, I don't know, maybe 50 blood draws, for example, over the course of a few weeks, and putting your child through that, is that really worth $50 a visit
Mm.
every time you go?
Is it? Is it? And you mentioned something that we didn't really get to, you mentioned the prison population. So they do also do clinical trials on that population. And do they provide funding to them as well?
No, so in the prison setting, it's a little bit different. The rules are a little more, I would say, conservative, a little bit more strict. So, in a prison setting, the IRB, the Institutional Review Board, that ethical committee who oversees those participants there, they have to have a what's called a quorum. So those that are approving the studies, the people who are part of the IRB that are like looking at the study before it's even approved, they have to have someone who is incarcerated, part of that population, be a part of that quorum, because they have to have a quorum is a group of folks from all walks of life and background come together and say, yeah, this study benefits this population. The risks, the benefits outweigh the risks, basically. And that's how a study gets to be approved. And just a little bit of background information. But in their specific population, it is different. They are a vulnerable population as well, just like children are, just like pregnant women are. So we have to look at things a little bit differently there. And as far as compensation is concerned, there really is no compensation as far as money goes because they are incarcerated. Now, that may not be the deal with every study because, of course, there's legalities involved, but the majority of the time, it's for them to better medical science. That's why they're doing it.
Wow. That's amazing because I guess, you know, just me knowing that the majority of individuals that are incarcerated are Black and brown men.
Mhm.
And to know that they could participate in certain clinical studies and they're like, if they were free, there could be compensation rendered, but they're participating to advance medical science. And there is a review board, but the chances of them actually getting the full insight of the information on the review board, I don't know. It just kind of puts me in a different space, especially in this era of COVID-19 vaccine
Mhm.
trials that are.
Well, the way
On,
that it's looked at from their perspective. So, whenever someone is incarcerated, and
okay,
maybe they get a work detail, right? They are on the good list, not so much the naughty list, while they're incarcerated. So they have the liberty to. They're provided. I shouldn't say they have. They are provided a little bit more liberty than maybe some of their counterparts there, and they're they've extended to that certain demographic, like, hey, you know what, this could be an option for you. um, I think that the challenge comes into play when you talk about money, that they wouldn't earn something like someone else would, that's in the free world, is because whenever they do a job in the prison system, they don't get paid the same as everybody in the free world. I mean, someone who works at a cleaners, for example, could make maybe like potentially between $8 to $10 an hour. Someone who works in a laundry room in the prison system makes what, like maybe
a dollar.
10 cents or a dollar. Yeah. So there's a big margin of difference.
I understand that, but it's something. You understand what I'm
It's
saying?
something,
It's
right?
something as opposed to nothing,
Nothing.
especially when you are participating in a study that's going to do something that you don't necessarily know in regards to your health. So
Hmm.
that is just kind of one of those things to kind of, it makes me, my mind go in a different place. But
Now it did, like I said, it depends on the study because there are studies that are more complex than others.
mhm,
So, and it depends on what those review boards accept and say, hey, yeah, that's fine. Let's just say maybe there is a study where they just want to gain information and they're maybe doing a behavioral science trial and all they're doing is asking questions. Well, a lot of people go and interview prison inmates and ask questions without paying them.
yeah, I can understand
So,
the behavioral science component.
mm-hmm,
Um, uh, it's the medicine, the
mm-hmm,
things that could possibly cause. neurological damage,
Mhm.
physiological damage, and those things, and not being compensated, and or if anything happens, because when you sign these releases, you're signing a release
Mhm.
of liability in a sense.
Mhm.
So it's those types of things. So just think.
Now, like I said, it's different for every. Oh, sorry. Oh, what did you? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Okay, here we go. Sorry. The phone fell from my hand. It's different with every clinical trial, with every sponsor, with every person who wants to do a study, I should say. So a lot of industry studies don't target that specific population because of that reason. There's not a whole lot of fairness that can be involved with them as far as compensation goes. But people get creative and they find ways to compensate that specific population. There's just a whole different set of rules when it comes to the incarcerated, because they are incarcerated. They are a vulnerable population. A lot of those folks may feel like, hey, I have to do this because if not, something could happen to me while I'm in here. I could be forced. I could feel coercion at its greatest. I
Yeah,
mean, let's face it, a lot of those folks maybe have been coerced while they were going through their legal battles, and that's why they're there in the first place.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, we digress. But that just kind of put a light bulb over my head. Thank you so much. You guys are awesome. Continue to support Workshop Wednesday and continue to encourage all those that you see to press forward during this time. Thank you for tuning in. Dr. Kiki signing out. Stay tuned on next week where we will bring you more of H-Town's findings. Take care. God bless.
Strength, courage, and wisdom, they can't keep us in shackles. You're the one that could change the trajectory of those family matters. Be the first college grad, be the first millionaire. Be your own wildest dreams, cause the world ain't fair.